Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Football Universe podcast. After a long hiatus, we are back. We're down a few team members. Life has changed up in the past couple months for every single one of us, but we do have Max returning, and then I can't remember if Ian was on the last podcast, but Ian's going to come back.
I don't think Ian's actually been on the NFL podcast.
Yeah.
He's been on the regular Sport Universe podcast with us with Brian in the past, but I don't think he's been. So he'll be making his first appearance here pretty soon.
Love Ian. He's going to be a great voice. Just to reintroduce ourselves, because we'll probably have new listeners this time around as well. I go by the name of Nicholas Horvath. I'm a senior now at Villanova University. I am pre-med, in the process of applying to medical school on top of everything else. Life's been crazy for me in the past couple of months, but it's been fun. Took a hiatus from football and the whole sports scene, but I'm back. I'm really excited for the season. I know Max is too. I'll let Max introduce himself.
So my name is Max Greenberg, as Nick said, and I go to Wake Forest University. I'm also a senior, and I'm a big Titans fan, and I'm pretty excited for this year because we have pretty high expectations. Hopefully you don't disappoint, but it's shaping up to be a really good year for us.
And 100%. Forgot to mention I'm a big Giants fan from New York. So without wasting your time, our plan for today, if you guys followed our last podcast, we kind of just went around and tried doing as much as we could in terms of a bit of technical difficulties there. Being back, me and Max are both back at school, so the Wi-Fi is kind of choppy, but we're going to do our best to keep going. So how we're going to break it down is we're going to try to go by division, probably cover a little bit of the draft picks, what we're expecting going into the season, et cetera, et cetera. Not to waste anybody's time, going right into it. AFC East is where I'm going to start. That's what's on my screen behind me. Starting with the Buffalo Bills. They went 13-3 last season with Sean McDermott. Pretty spectacular season. Josh Allen continued to make strides. And they went ahead and drafted Gregory Rousseau with the 30th pick in this last draft, who, bit of a rough pass rusher out of Miami. 6'7", has all the athletic tools to do so, but his skill set is still pretty rough. So definitely a coachable player. He could be a monster. He's one of those players that you pick for all the athletic assets, and you see if you can coach him into that a superstar that he can be. So other than that, not really too many highlights from the Bills draft picks. They went 13-3 last season. Same head coach, Sean McDermott. Pretty much brought back the same team. Stephon Diggs. I don't expect this team to go anywhere else than what they did last season. They finished 13-3. If Josh Allen continues to make progressions, I don't think he compared his jump from his first year to his second year was the second to his third year. I can't remember now. Was spectacular, right? And I don't know if we'll see another jump like that out of him again. But if we do, then you're in for a wild ride with the Buffalo Bills. Regardless, not to spoil anything, but the AFC East, I think the Bills have it on lock. All the other franchises are a little bit behind them right now. So in my opinion, Bills are still going to run the AFC East, I think, with no competition. Max?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I do think the Bills for sure win the AFC East. As far as the draft, the first round pick, Gregory Rousseau, I was not a huge fan of that selection personally, mainly because when I watched him play in the games, I didn't think his type of pass rushing would really translate to the NFL because he didn't seem that great at getting off defenders. It seemed that what's what I'm looking for? He'd kind of use his power instead of using football moves and speed. And also, did you watch his pro day highlights?
Yeah, not fantastic. Again, I see him as
terrible.
He has the athletic tools to do so, but again, his skill set's so rough, right?
I just watched that and I just kept thinking to myself, where are the details? Like, where's the fine tuning? It's going to take a lot for a guy like that to really get up there. I would think he's not going to make a huge impact in this first year. It's going to be biased on my part being a Wake guy, but I love their second round pick, Carlos Basham. I can tell you watching him, he's a good edge rusher, and I think the value was really there. And I mean, he may not make an impact first year, but definitely expect good things from him moving forward. As for the rest of the Bills team, I mean, yeah, they lost bad in the AFC Championship, but now is not the time to panic. Keep the same team going. It's a learning experience. Josh Allen is going to continue to grow. I think he and Mahomes are the best two quarterbacks in football, and he got a well-deserved, I believe, 6-year contract.
I was going to bring that up exactly. I can't remember the exact price and years off the top of my head, but I do remember the fact that, again, the Bills are taking a proactive step there and re-signing Josh Allen, right? They don't want to have to sign him to that ridiculous – I wouldn't say ridiculous, but it's kind of well-deserved for Patrick Mahomes. Regardless, it's still a huge hit on the Chiefs cap, puts a lot of pressure on their organization to perform. The Bills go ahead and re-sign Josh Allen early with the hopes that he's going to continue to progress. For all we can see right now, he's going to be Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes really running the NFL in terms of, the best quarterbacks in the league going into the future. So the Bills signing him this early on, again, with him projecting to be that superstar quarterback, again, still has performed very well up to this point. It's a great signing. They're saving money in the long run by doing so. So I think Bills fans, I think all of the NFL was like, that's a good signing. And I definitely agree with that, Max.
It's kind of one of those things where you sort of have to take a gamble on his progression. I don't really think you're taking much of a gamble here. I think he's a great quarterback. He's improved every year, and he's already one of the best, and that's all you can really ask out of your first-round quarterback. And honestly, I think he was worth about whatever they wanted to give him. So I can't complain about that signing at all. They did well to lock him up.
100%. So I think pretty much settled in on the Bills. Still a great team. They're definitely in the running away championship this year. Nothing has really changed. So moving on from there, Miami Dolphins, that's the next team up. 10-6 last season. I think it was a really interesting year for the Dolphins. They're such a young team. Going into the draft, right, they picked Jalen Waddle, who was my favorite receiver out of this draft. I think Jalen Waddle is essentially your mirror to Tyreek Hill. But I think he could be better than Tyreek Hill. He's a little bit of height on him, but again, he has the speed. I just see him as an athletic player. He's a player that you're going to hit with the deep post, and he's going to burn. You can put two deep safeties, right? You're running a cover two. You put two deep safeties. He'll run a deep post in between them and burn them over the top. You got somebody like Tua, who can. I think they're going to hopefully settle in with Tua this year. I'm going to get to that in a second. Throwing it over the top. You're adding a lot of young talent to this team. The offensive line. Brian Flores is a fantastic coach. I'm going on a little bit of a tangent right here, but I just like what this Dolphins team is at. All together. Really young team, a lot to learn. But I think Brian Flores is a great coach. I think their corner situation's a little bit rough right now because it was Xavier Howard that had complained about his contract.
Yeah, it sounded like he demanded a trade, but it sounds like they agreed to a restructured deal, so they should be good for now, I think.
Yeah, he was a little upset with his contract, but he did perform as one of the best corners in the league last year, so I understand. It's not like he's getting paid nothing because I forget he signed a deal. I can't remember the money off the top of my head, but a pretty solid deal. But he wasn't being paid like a top corner in the NFL, which he performed like last year. So, it's interesting to see how that works out. However, again, they have talent all across this roster, and I think Jalen Phillips, I can't forget him, the edge rusher out of Miami, also a great pick there. I think. So I think that they did a good job in the draft. They did a good job in the draft last year. I think Brian Flores and Miami, I think number one thing they got to do this season, I don't know where they're going to end up, in all honesty. They could progress a little bit. They could progress a little bit. Depends on how everything comes together and how their rookies and their young players progress. I think regardless of no matter what they got to do, they have to stick with Tua. I think Tua is the future for Miami. I think he's a solid quarterback. And the way that they have, put him on and off the field all the time between him and Ryan Fitzpatrick and pulled him out. I never really understood it last year. And obviously I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick is no longer on the team, but regardless, stick with Tua, really play him out. Hopefully Tua stays healthy this year. That's going to be a big factor, but stick with Tua. I think that's going to be the main point going forward with this team because I think he is the future of the franchise.
Let me just say right now that I think all the talk last year about how the Dolphins potentially need to replace Tua and all this talk about how the NFL today you have to produce immediately. Calm down, guys. He's a quarterback. He's going to take time to develop. Look at Josh Allen in his second year. He was about average and he still had a lot of growing to do, but he blossomed. It just people have a little more patience. Like, come on. It's these quarterbacks, especially the quarterback position. It's one of the hardest positions to adapt to in the NFL, probably the hardest one. Not even probably, undoubtedly the hardest one. Yeah, it's going to take some time. It could take a few more years. And I definitely expect Tua to progress this year. I think the Dolphins will go about as far as that his progression takes them. But they can't do what they did last year where they pull him because they think they can win games. Part of what I really don't understand about that is, yeah, the Dolphins had a good record and they could have made the playoffs, but the goal was never to win that last year. The goal is for the build for the future. And now if you're Brian Flores and the rest of that coaching staff, you have to commit to Tua, keep him in there for the good and bad because that's how he's going to grow. And the only thing I have to say about the Dolphins and the Xavier Howard situation is I was kind of shocked when that happened, because seeing a team like that with supposedly good culture, and Brian Flores doing really good things, and then Howard goes there and demands a trade, and I'm just something seems like a red flag there. Like, are the Dolphins not as good internally as we think, or is Howard not a team player, or what's going on? Something there just doesn't sit right with me.
I had the exact when I remember when that headline came out. It was like a month ago now or so. When that headline came out, I had the exact same thoughts. Something's up here, because we know about the franchise externally. We know the players support Brian Flores. We know there's big backing towards that entire system. Players were liking it. The changes that occurred moving forward. And then Xavier Howard goes and requests a trade and basically calls out the franchise for not being, not supporting him as a player. There's some sort of conflict there. And something, either one side's got to be lying, right? Or not exactly lying, but has their own truth. And it's going to be Howard's side of Miami. And it should be interesting down the line to see where that goes. They re-signed him, but we know how this goes, where once that relationship kind of gets ripped apart, where Xavier Howard calls him out publicly on Instagram, etc., it's hard to repair it. Even if you try and settle the contract agreements, it's always going to be that, he separated himself from the team. And that could always be an issue down the line, especially when you need a cohesive group as a secondary, which their secondary was pretty fantastic last year between him, Byron Jones. It's just, does that disrupt the chemistry? Who knows? It could be bad.
Yeah, I want a truth out of there, because something doesn't seem right.
100%. So going on from there, we have the Patriots, who I think had a really interesting offseason, to say the least.
Yep.
The things that the Patriots do with time Bill Belichick, not everybody understands it, but it always seems to work out. And honestly, I like Bill Belichick's moves here. So going into it, right, during free agency, they spent a lot of money, no doubt about it. My biggest two signings, and I think everyone would agree, we got Hunter Henry, and then you go ahead and acquire Jonnu Smith as well. That double tight end setup. Jonnu Smith, great tight end for the Titans last year, makes his way to New England. Definitely interesting combo. And then they go ahead and draft, obviously, Mac Jones out of Alabama at the 15th pick, rather, in the draft. I kind of see this as sort of when Brady started, in a way. And here's why. I think he's modeling it after that. Because when Brady started, right, he was not a first round draft pick at all, but you had a blooming Brady, and then you had two tight ends around him. You had Aaron Hernandez, who obviously we all know what Aaron Hernandez turned into. So when Aaron Hernandez was on the field, he was a good tight end. And then you obviously had Gronk. So you have that double tight end setup with a blossoming quarterback, and maybe that's where Bill Belichick's going with this. But either way, I like Mac Jones. He's been pretty solid in the preseason so far. I think he's right where he was drafted in terms of how he's been playing so far. It should be interesting to see where they go. And, with Mac Jones being drafted there, they also re-signed Cam Newton, which was interesting as well. Cam Newton had a pretty abysmal year. They paid him nothing last year, has a pretty abysmal year. They re-signed him for more money. Is Cam going to start at the beginning of the year? They're going to put in Mac Jones. I'd imagine they're going to start off with Cam and see how it goes from there, and then replace him with Mac Jones down the line at some point. And trying to use Cam maybe as a mentor, which I don't know if Cam is really the guy you want mentoring. For me, Cam's like a fun-loving player. He's not a player that can really sit down and coach a player about the X's and O's. But should be interesting to see who they go with down the line as a quarterback. I'd imagine Cam Newton probably the first half of the year, and then Mac Jones the second half of the year, barring Cam Newton doing fantastic, because I really don't see him improving over this year. He just has let it, his game, especially in the NFL, has been based upon his athleticism, which has steadily declined over the years. So I don't expect him to really get any better this year, which would lead us to a Mac Jones second half of the season. That being said, I don't expect the Patriots to really climb the rankings too much. Maybe they'll end up second place in the AFC East and take over the Dolphins, but we'll have to see. Max?
I kind of disagree with you on the Patriots a little bit. When I saw Bill Belichick's offseason moves, and when I hear all these things, and I know you personally weren't a fan of Bill Belichick after we saw what Brady did, but when I look at what Belichick did this offseason, And there are people out there calling him, he's a terrible coach, he's stubborn. Like, guys, the one thing he proved this offseason that he is not is stubborn. When Belichick had Brady, you could obviously see how a lot of times he didn't want to go out to the free agent market and pay talent. Yeah. That's what he did this offseason because he realized he can't win without talent. And it's not a thing on him. That's what most coaches do. You don't win like that unless you have a great quarterback. And he's realizing now he has to have talent to win a Super Bowl or to even make the playoffs. And last year with the team they had, what were they like 7-9 with probably a team that could really win like 3 games, it looked like on paper. Yeah. And when especially one thing I want to circle back to with the moves he made, especially with the moves to get the tight ends with Cam Newton, who, by the way, I just want to say at this point, he's really a name. His quarterbacking is not good anymore. I'm sorry. It's just not. He can't throw that well, but getting the tight ends is going to help him adapt because now he can do a lot more checkdowns. It'll help Mac Jones kind of ease into his role. I honestly think the Pats could be a dark horse playoff contender this year. I like what they did. I don't like all of their moves, but I like the overall direction of what they did, and I think they could be better than a lot of people think.
And I agree with you there. It's just I like the players they signed. Don't get me wrong. My issue is, especially when you put out big money in free agency, which Bill Belichick never does. I don't think he's a bad coach. My issue with it is you have a situation which the next team we'll get to is New York Jets. Look at the New York Jets over the past couple of years ago. They didn't build through the draft. They built through free agent signings. They signed C.J. Mosley to big money. He's been injured ever since. They signed Le'Veon Bell to big money. No longer in the NFL right now. I don't think Le'Veon Bell's even signed to a team. So, my issue is locking in money with free agents hurts you in the long run because you really don't attack that position with draft picks. If those players don't pan out, now you have money locked in. Even if you do attack it with draft picks, you sign a quarterback to big money, you draft a quarterback. Well, then you have the issue of who's starting, and then when your rookie quarterback gets to that position where they're starting, then you have money locked in to your free agent that you can't put on the quarterback. I just think it creates problems down the line. If you don't have immediate success with free agent signings, but if anyone's going to be able to sign free agents and get use out of them, it's going to be Belichick. And again, I do like the signings, especially because again that 2 tight end system, the way that the Patriots are offense essentially built on checkdowns and running the football. I would say between the tackles is probably their biggest thing. Having 2 tight ends that can block and kind of do it all, I think it's really big. So I like the signings. I'm just questioning having all that money locked in free agency. Where does that go down the line? That's always my concern. That's not to the Patriots. That's towards every team.
Well, if there's one guy I trust to cultivate a good culture and get guys to play hard, it's Belichick. And no better example of that is Cam Newton, who honestly a lot of people thought was a diva, and I did too, but he loved Belichick. He thought he was a really cool guy. And I trust him. I trust him to do well with what he has. And plus, all the moves he made were tactical too, so they made sense.
100%. So moving on from there, last team in the AFC East, we have the New York Jets. Abysmal season to say the least for last season, 2-14. I see another year of just delusional Jets fans thinking Zach Wilson is going to solve everything. Great quarterback at a BYU. As good as he can be, there's no way he's going to change his team around because
the same about Darnold.
Yeah, he said the same about Darnold. There's just not enough talent on that team. Look at your defense. Who do you really have on your defense? Marcus May is a solid safety. I'll give you that. You lost Jamal Adams, which honestly he hasn't been fantastic in the Seahawks, regardless. But
honestly, it was a good move.
Yeah, down the line, I think it was a good move. So, but again, regardless of what happened with Jamal Adams, what talent do you really have on this roster right now that's going to bloom? Not much outside of you. Mekhi Becton, great pick. He's there to protect Zach Wilson. Great pick there, which was last year's draft pick, obviously. Looking at the offense, Denzel Mims was injured for the majority of the year. He hasn't really done much. I think he was a 2nd round draft pick for them last year for the 2nd rounder. You just don't have a lot of players that are playmakers on this team. I don't see how you're really going to improve that much, only drafting a quarterback. Obviously, as they built to the draft, and if Zach Wilson does pan out, down the line, they could be good again. But this year, don't expect anything out of the Jets. I'd still expect them to be in last place in the AFC East.
When you look at the Jets top to bottom, and there's one of those teams where I don't think the talent's really the problem. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong. they don't have great talent, but they're not the least talented team in football.
True.
They were the worst coach team in football, and they're one of the worst run teams in football. And a team like that, I don't look at their team on paper. I look at them as from an upper management standpoint. Can they actually work as a competent organization? And so far this offseason, they made good moves. For example, Robert Saleh hire is a really good hire. I think
I agree.
We don't know how he'll pan out yet. But as far as cultivating a good culture, he seems to be a guy that can do that. And I also, even though they traded up for him, getting Elijah Vera Tucker in the first round, I thought was a good move because you got to protect your quarterback first and foremost. So I think the Jets are making some strides, but I don't think it's going to be a good year for them. I mean, it couldn't be really worse than last year. But then again, we have to see what they can do and how they can function as a team. That's really what's going to be important for them.
100%. And I agree. Salah was probably one of my favorite head coaching hires of the offseason. One, I loved him on the 49ers. Great X's and O's guy, number one. Also brings the energy. I think he is one of those assistant coaches that was like always destined to be a head coach. So I really like him. He's, again, one of my favorites of the offseason. Compared to what they had in the past, I mean, you can't get much worse than that.
Adam Gase. I mean, let's get.
You can't do worse than Adam Gase. So it's going to be tough to do worse than that.
And they still won 2 games with Adam Gase. As
exactly.
terrible as that sound, two games winning under Adam Gase is probably more than you would expect.
Exactly. So progression is there. They're heading in the right direction. They're just not there yet. Still last place in the Nfc East, I think, no doubt.
For sure.
Moving on from there, we have the Baltimore Ravens, who had a bit of a regression last season compared to the season.
Now.
Yeah, the NFC North. Gotcha. So moving to the NFC North, we have the Ravens. A bit of a regression there last season. They went 11-5. They weren't quite the team they were the year prior. Lamar Jackson kind of struggled. I think the biggest issue with this team, if I had to pinpoint it, obviously injuries play a factor, but without a doubt for me was the wide receivers' inability to get open. I think their wide receiver core was pretty abysmal last year. That was one of the main issues they had. And then, when they went into the draft, first thing they take is Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota, who I think is a pretty solid receiver. Should help them. Hopefully the wide receiver core get open more and give Lamar Jackson a little bit more to throw to. Other than that, I think it was just a down season. I can't really pinpoint what was wrong with the Ravens last season. However, do I think they're going to win the division this year? I don't know. I think it's going to be another one of those tight years between the Steelers, Ravens, and Browns, depending on how Ben Roethlisberger does. But I could see the Browns. If I had to pick a favorite right now, I guess I'm going to spoil it, but the Browns will probably be there. But the Ravens, I don't know where they're at right now, to be honest. Lamar Jackson's still Lamar Jackson. Max, do you know what was wrong with them last season? Because I personally can't pinpoint.
Yeah, honestly, here's the thing. The Ravens, I will say I love the Bateman pick because he's the kind of guy I really think they need. A guy with an exceptional catch radius and can kind of compensate for Lamar's inability to be totally accurate. I think that was really a smart selection. Yeah. But overall, I think this Ravens team's going to go about as far as Lamar can take them. And say what you will about his receiving core, but when it comes to being able to throw the football, he has not shown that he can in the biggest situation. Even in the game against the Titans in Nashville, he made most of his biggest plays with his legs, including that 150-yard score.
I remember that, yeah.
So it's gonna be. I think this is a make or break year for the Ravens. If it doesn't pan out with Lamar, I think I don't want to say you're done, but like. I just don't know.
Yeah, that's another thing. When Lamar going not last year, the year prior, you look at that Ravens roster, a lot of the players on the team were veterans, right? So you have a very limited window to be successful. So, and it's closing as you go. It's going to be an interesting situation for Lamar Jackson, but team's in a complete rebuild, sort of.
Were there other receivers? Hollywood Brown, who's not good.
Yeah. I can't even remember the rest of the receiver core off the top of my head.
Sammy Watkins, who's nothing special.
Yeah. Who's the other one? He came from the Saints, I think.
Willie Snead.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's Snead too.
You got one hopefully good receiver, and you have 3 others who are not all that.
Yeah, who have had good seasons, but are inconsistent at best. So again, that wide receiver core. If I had to pinpoint one thing, it'd be the wide receiver core. They intend to address it, so we'll have to see how they do the season. I don't know. Again, if I had to
they lost both their edge rushers and had to replace them in the draft with Jason Owe in the first round.
That's true. So So I think this one, again, I think the AFC East is a little bit more locked in. AFC North is going to be a little more interesting. I think Steelers and Browns are probably on top of the Ravens here, with the Browns being on top for me. Moving to the next team that I have on me, either of those teams, we have the Bengals. The Bengals, they were 4-11 last season. Joe Burrow got injured, obviously. He's back, which is fantastic. Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. I don't think it's really a question. He's their franchise quarterback. Going into the draft, they took probably the best receiver. Even though Jalen Waddle was my favorite, again, this wide receiver class we all knew was stacked with receivers. Jamar Chase out of LSU, so you have that reconnection with I'm blanking right now, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I like the Bengals offense so far. I think they really need to, I personally, they need Penei Sewell there probably. However, it's going to be enough rough year probably for Joe Burrow with the offensive line. However, I think they have the talent on offense to really cultivate a powerful offense down the line here. So Jamar Chase, I love T. Higgins at Clemson last year. I thought him and Joe Burrow had a really good connection. And then you pair that with Jamar Chase, you have a really solid wide receiver core there. You have Joe Burrow. Question is, how are they going to address that offensive line? Obviously, they went with Carmen at Clemson at the second round, which was solid, but I think it's going to take more than a guard or just one player to really fix an offensive line because it was abysmal last year. Again, this franchise is still pretty far away from being successful, but I do like the draft pick there. Bengals are still last place in the AFC North for me, no question.
I definitely think that much of the Bengals' success this year is going to come down to, maybe not success, but what really is going to matter is how they can protect Joe Burrow, and remember they also signed Riley Reef, so getting those two players, hopefully you can play them both from the left side, play one at tackle, one at guard. We'll see how those pan out because I think protecting Joe Burrow is the biggest need for them because they can't afford to have him go down like that, and you don't want to ruin the guy's career. So yeah, that's what's really good. I think that's what's really gonna. Yeah, that's the main objective for them this year.
So moving on from them, we have the next team that I have up, Cleveland Browns. My favorite to win the division this year. They go ahead and draft Greg Newsome from out of Northwestern there. Pretty solid corner. I'm interested to see where the Browns go this year. I know they picked up Jadeveon Clowney in the offseason. I'm trying to think what else they picked up off the top of my head.
Hill and John Johnson, two players who I really think were smart pickups for them. They're tactically smart and analytically inclined. That and they make financial sense. 100%.
So again, I like where the Browns are right here. Right, they really revamped that defense. I think that defense. I think the Browns probably have, in my opinion, the most talented roster in the NFL.
They honestly do.
Across the board, they just at every position you can find talent.
Yeah,
and the fact that haven't been Super Bowl contenders is really a coaching thing, but coaching was pretty good last year too. So they're moving towards the right direction. I think the Browns take the division this year, without a doubt. Odell's gonna be back and healthy. Hopefully, he'll come back to his form. He's getting a little bit older now. Still have Jarvis Landry. Nick Chubb is going to be Nick Chubb, probably the top 3 running back in the NFL. Baker Mayfield maybe will get a little better this year. He was better last year compared to the year prior, but he still had work to do. Again, this team is moving in the right direction. The coaching's better. I think they're in position to take the division this year. And if they click and the coaching is right, they're easily Super Bowl contenders, if not favorites, with that amount of talent.
Yeah, I wrote the other day an article for the Sport Universe on why I expect Baker Mayfield to have a really good year this year. And if you want to look at that, go ahead. And I'll basically summarize it right now. I think last year late was really the first time we got to see Baker with a coach, with a good coach, a system that was dialed in, because it took time, obviously, because of no offseason due to COVID. It was really the first time he had the best situation he could have, and he thrived. And continuing that this year, I expect really good things. To think that we're living in a time where the Browns are making really good decisions for their football team, and where they should be one of the favorites. Who would have ever thought?
2015, you're looking at Johnny Manziel, who's drunk the night before, and that's your starting quarterback the next day. So it's just quite a different franchise than it was back then. It's taken time, but they're pretty solid right now. Moving on from there, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I don't know where they're going to be this year, honestly. They brought back TJ. They still have TJ Watt. I think they re-signed him to a contract, if I'm not mistaken, right? To an extension. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was worth. Locking him in, one of the best pass rushers in the league last year, so it's a no-brainer. Minka Fitzpatrick, again, that defense I don't think is necessarily the question. Wasn't fantastic. You have fantastic players on it. I think there's something to build on there. The offense is really what I question about. Going into the draft, Najee Harris, my favorite running back out of this draft for sure. I think every single draft roughly has that star running back that comes out of it. And I think Najee Harris is that guy out of this draft. He's going to be solid for them. Was that the number one need? I don't think so at all. My issue with the Steelers this year, especially, bringing back Ben Roethlisberger, the most pointless move ever because his arm's dead.
Loyalty.
It's loyalty, but is he helping your franchise? No. Apparently, he's changed his throwing motion this year, but you want Ben Roethlisberger at his best. It's like that's what I've heard. So apparently, he's changed his throwing motion a little bit. He's feeling better. That's what the media is reporting. But at the same time, it's not like he got any younger from last year. His arm's still probably dead. What are you going to get out of him down the line? Ben Roethlisberger was probably their biggest issue last year, and I don't think it's going to change this year. Obviously, you don't have much behind him right now. They didn't really address it in the draft. They're hoping to just get by this year with Ben Roethlisberger. I'm not a fan. Maybe Mason, depending how bad Ben Roethlisberger does, maybe he'll prove us all wrong and have a fantastic season. We'll come back and we'll bite these words. We'll play it in that podcast where I talk about how great Ben Roethlisberger is doing, but I don't see it. You have Mason Rudolph behind him. You don't have much of a choice. You're stuck with Ben Roethlisberger for the year. I don't know how far they're, this team is going to go as far as Ben Roethlisberger will take them, similar to the Ravens, right? But we saw how great they were last year. Again, it's not a question of coaching. Thompson's fantastic. He coached that team 12-4 last season. Makes no sense. And they were, were they like 10-0 at one point, weren't they? I forget.
They were 11-0.
They were 11-0. And then they just fell apart come postseason because you cannot win in I think set in stone rule in the NFL. You cannot go deep in the postseason without a solid quarterback. You just can't. And Ben Roethlisberger fell short for them in the postseason and towards the end of the season. I don't think much is going to change there. Max?
Not only that, but their offensive line is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And they did little to nothing to replace that. Even in the first 2 rounds of the draft, they took Najee Harris, I think Pat Freiermuth. It's like, what are you doing? Like you have to protect your quarterback who is already, he can't run. He's not going to mitigate the lack of an offensive line. Can't throw that well either. I just don't know what you're really trying to accomplish. Yeah, skill positions help a lot, but what good are they if you don't have a good offensive line, if your quarterback can't be protected? I don't get their approach there. And don't forget on defense, they lost Bud Dupree. And if you remember last year when he went out, him being out definitely hurt their pass rush. So hot take, I really would not be surprised if this team is last in the AFC North, because Cincinnati looks to be trending upwards. Cleveland's trending upwards. Baltimore is definitely going to hang around. Strangely enough, an undermanned team is one that Tomlin seems to do best with because he actually knows he has to do well. And Tomlin, I think, is one of the more aggravating head coaches in football because oftentimes whenever, as we saw in 2019, when that team was injured to hell and they turned in a really good year, all things considered, but then come playoff time last year and in 2018, they should be a lot better than they are. Maybe not last year, but at least with the drama heading into that playoff game with Juju and Chase Claypool mocking the Browns and even joining on it too. Like, you can't do that as a head coach. No nonsense allowed. Like, I'm sorry. I don't really believe in the Steelers team. I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs this year. And Tomlin can work well with not as much talent as he needs, but you need talent to win at some point. That's going to catch up with you sooner or later.
Taking last season and projecting to this season, that Steelers team might be the worst 12-4 team in NFL history.
Yes, absolutely. By bar none, the worst 11-0 team in history.
100%. So it's just that, again, it's hard to say where they're going to fall because Tomlin's a coach a really bad team, but I don't have any Super Bowl hopes for them at all. No shot.
No chance.
So moving on from there, going to the AFC South, Max's division. Here we go. So we're going to start off with the Houston Texans. My opinion, the worst team in football, not even close.
God.
Where do we even start? They got rid of Bill O'Brien. Step one.
The real question is, where do we end?
Yeah. Don't say one positive thing they did this whole season. They got rid of Bill O'Brien. They hired David Culley, which is like,
congratulations.
Yeah, anybody could have done that. Okay, let's talk about everything else, which is just horrifying. Let's look at the draft. Oh, O'Brien got rid of all their picks. Round 3. They picked till round 3. They picked a quarterback, David Mills, which is out of Stanford. Okay, quarterback, 3rd round quarterback. Basically, he's an emergency option for when they're going to have to trade Watson and Deshaun Watson at some point.
To play again.
Deshaun Watson, a complete mess at the quarterback position between his trade requests, his complaints about the franchise, and then I think most importantly, we're looking outside of football here, the sexual assault allegations that came up in numerous amounts against him. It seems like they're being cleared away now. If we're not here to determine whether he's guilty or not. If he is, then that's horrible. Get rid of him in the NFL. If not, regardless, it's just a bad look for the Houston Texans. The only the haystack on the needle, whatever you want to call it, the only thing he had good with this franchise is now looking horrible. Talented quarterback in the absolute worst possible situation ever. There is nothing going for this Houston Texans team. They're going to regress. You have a new head coach. What is he going to do with all that terrible talent? You don't have any talent on this team either. They could be an 0-16 team next year. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. It's so funny. They had a roster that was actually pretty talented. You had a great quarterback, 2 really good edge rushers, and one of the best receivers in football, and you turn into whatever the hell you have now. Like, how do you do that? Like, what?
I didn't even mention the whole Deshaun Watson thing. I totally forgot. J.J. Watt left.
Yeah, he literally asked them to release him.
Yeah.
I just remember watching the video last year of them walking up the field after they lost the final game where JJ said to Deshaun, "We wasted 1 of your years." That's just the whole franchise. Yeah. They waste everything they have. And I mean, even that's one of those teams that even if they did have some sort of talent, like they can't overcome what a mess they are.
And you think about the Houston Texans, right? When did they become a franchise in the NFL? 2000 around the year?
2002.
Around 2002. They have not been a successful franchise in any of those years, really.
They've won as far as the divisional round, and that is it. Like
it's just horrible.
Nothing. If you've been around for 20 years.
If there's one franchise in the NFL that would collapse at some point, it's probably going to be the Houston Texans. It's pretty bad. I got nothing.
The NFL doesn't have to step in. I mean, hopefully they don't, because I want them to be terrible since they're in my division.
Very true. So going on from there, not much to say there. We have the Indianapolis Colts. They had an interesting season last year. I don't know where they're going to end up now. They went 11-5 with Phillip Rivers. He's gone. They go ahead and acquire Carson Wentz in the offseason. He injures his foot. He's out now. So I forget who's stepping up for quarterback for them now.
Well, I actually heard that Wentz is trending toward being available for week 1.
Okay, so that's good.
Know if that's true.
In my opinion, Wentz is definitely an upgrade over Phillip Rivers, no doubt. Especially long term with this team. Wentz, I think, is a talented quarterback, and he didn't really fit the system with the Eagles anymore. It was time for them to move on from him. Hopefully, he can revitalize his career in Indianapolis. I have high hopes for him. I thought he was the perfect fit for that Colts team, especially with Reich as head coach. So I think that was obviously the biggest part of the offseason right there. Looking at who they're drafted, you picked out Kwity Paye out of Michigan. Very, very good pass rusher out of Michigan. Has a lot of speed. Should be a solid pickup there. It should be interesting. How far is T.Y. Hilton going to regress? Is Michael Pittman going to step up? A lot of question marks with this team. How that defense is aging. Quentin Nelson's obviously locked in there. A lot of question marks with this team. I wouldn't favorite them. Definitely not my favorite to win the division. I think they're locked in second place again. I don't know. I got much to say about them. Where are they going to end up? Probably around the same record, maybe a little bit worse, maybe a little bit better, but definitely second place in the division for me.
The Colts, I think, are one of, if not the biggest wild card in the NFL this year. Mainly, it's because of the Wentz trade. That was their obvious big move. And when I look at Wentz, let's get one thing right. The situation in Philly probably made him worse than he actually is, for sure. That was a terrible team, and they're also a complete mess. But when you look at some of the decisions Wentz made, I just couldn't believe some of the stuff. Remember one game against the Cowboys, he had at least 10 yards of open grass to run, and he throws it, the double coverage gets picked off. One game against the Giants, he's under pressure. Instead of just taking the sack because he's going to get hit anyway, he throws again into double coverage almost. And one game against the Seahawks, he threw it. I believe it was Quandre Diggs. It looked like he was the intended receiver. It's like, mean, I get the Eagles were bad, but at some point you have to correct your own errors. And Wentz was making some really egregious errors. And it's not like he has an outstanding receiving core on the Colts. T.Y. Hilton's not getting any younger. Who knows what Michael Pittman's going to be this year, right? He wasn't that special last year at all. I mean, this team could either be really, really good. I mean, I don't think they'll be really bad because Frank Reich's a good head coach. I think he'll at least get them to 8-9 or 9-8, but I don't know. We'll really have to see once they hit the field.
100%. So moving on from there, Jacksonville Jaguars. I think another franchise where you kind of like the Jets, right? However, obviously they went 1-15. They got the holy grail of the draft. They got Trevor Lawrence. Without a doubt, a fantastic quarterback. Probably the best quarterback in the drafts. I love Trevor Lawrence was being the number one draft, like when he came in as a freshman at Clemson, basically. And then as time goes on, people love to debate, this quarterback's better when the draft rolls around. Trevor Lawrence was the best quarterback in the draft in my eyes. There's no doubt about it. No one has an arm quite like him. I think he's more or less, he's better than Joe Burrow. He has more on tape that shows he can perform year after year than Joe Burrow did, because Joe Burrow had that 1 year step up. So I think Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback we've seen enter the NFL in a while. Again, same little situation with the Jets. One player's not going to do it all. This Jaguars team, maybe they'll get 3 wins, 4 wins this year. But Trevor Lawrence, obviously the right pick there. Another pick, I love their first 3 picks right here. Travis Etienne out of Clemson, great running back. Pair him right back with Trevor Lawrence. I think it's a great pick there. A little bit of a question there with James Robinson. Had a pretty spectacular year for. I think James Robinson went undrafted, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then he does. What
were you saying?
I think James Robinson for the Jaguars. He went undrafted, if I remember correctly, right? And then
I wouldn't be surprised because nobody knew him until.
Yeah, he went undrafted. Had a fantastic year last year, and then you go and pick Travis Etienne. It's definitely going to create a little bit of an issue in the running back room, a little bit. And then Tyson Campbell, I liked out of Georgia. So I think their first 3 picks there were pretty great. Then you had Walker Little out of Stanford, was a pretty good. So I think that Jaguars nailed the draft. They're building talent. I just don't know and then obviously you got Myers, who is a pretty good head coach. So I like, again, Jaguars and Jets going in the right direction. Is Trevor Lawrence going to be enough? No. And then I also want to address this. All the rage about Tim Tebow being cut, he deserved to get cut. He was just not that great as a tight end. If you really go back and watch the film, he ran a couple of routes. His blocking was atrocious. He was not built to be a tight end in the NFL. The only reason he really got.
Are you talking about? Tim Tebow. Sorry,
Tim Tebow. Yeah.
Yeah. I just remember that one highlight of him just getting blocked out by one. It was like, what are you doing?
Like a linebacker, he shoved him like a quarterback would block because he's a quarterback. He's his career in professional sports, I think, is over. He's definitely a sportscaster at this point. A great, fun player to watch, and then I think a great human being in general. Just I don't really understand the outrage of him being cut. He just was not talented enough to make an NFL roster as a tight end. Max?
I'm a little more critical of the Jags than you are, and a lot of what I think they're doing seems to be name chasing more than anything. Maybe that's stretching it, but some of their decisions have made me feel that way, especially the Tim Tebow one. Because if you want someone who's nothing but a name at this point in football, it's Tim Tebow. Like, what did you think he was going to do for you? Like, really?
Yeah.
There's not much. They shouldn't have expected much to begin with. And about the Urban Meyer hire, I mean, yeah, he had a great college career, but if you look at the Jags a couple years ago when they had Tom Coughlin, and you saw with him being a strict disciplinarian, and you saw the mess he made by requiring the Jaguars to go to these mandatory offseason appointments where he would fine if they didn't show up, and the NFLPA had to step in and literally say, don't sign with the Jaguars, this is what they do. And then you hire the exact same kind of guy as your head coach. Like, that could be a major disaster. I honestly disagree with you on the ETN pick. I was not a fan of that one bit at all, because James Robinson, especially a guy like that who's undrafted, he'll play with a chip on his shoulder. I believe he finished in the top 5 rush yards last year. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, if not, he was damn close.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect him to keep improving. Running back's one of those positions, especially in the first round, you don't take that position unless you don't have any other needs. The Jags had any other needs. That pick, they should have used that, and I always said this, they should have used it on Tevin Jenkins. Even if you think you have the right tackle spot filled with Jawan Taylor, right, who I believe it is, you can put Jenkins in at guard. You can never have too many guys on the offensive line, and that's more important than giving Trevor his back in college, because he had a perfectly fine running back there. and it's way more important to make sure his knees don't get blown out. Like, I don't know, but a lot of people are saying, oh, Trevor, now they have a good quarterback. One player does not change an organization. We know this. You need a great quarterback to win. A great quarterback will win you games, but the lack of talent around the quarterback is what's going to lose you games and ultimately championships.
100%. Jaguars still locked in last place there.
The Texans.
Oh, that's true. Pretty abysmal division right there in terms of the Giants. I totally blanked on the Texans, man. I think the highlight of this division, which we're going to get to right now, I'm actually excited, the Tennessee Titans. They went, I believe, 11-5 last year as well. I'm mistaken in that. They went 11-5 last year. They wound up winning the division. Looking at the draft, they went and got Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech. Wasn't my favorite corner out of the draft, but I'm sure Max can have a lot more to say. They're in position to win the division again this year. Biggest loss for them in the offseason, I think, was probably Corey Davis. However, he definitely replaced it with a lot better and an upgraded Julio Jones. What a fantastic trade that was in acquiring him. Julio Jones is going to I'm sure is going to be fantastic for the Titans. Ryan Tannehill is going to have more to throw to this year than ever. Derrick Henry's going to perform. That offense is going to be an absolute monster, no doubt. Defensively, you didn't really lose much. Besides Jadeveon Clowney, which he performed pretty subparly.
Oh, that's not a loss.
Yeah, it's not really a loss.
He was not a loss. No.
He was very mediocre in his time with Tennessee, and he really hasn't been the same since his first couple of years with the Texans. Other than that, I think the Titans, when you really look at it, they got better this offseason. So without a doubt, they're my favorites to win the division. Max?
Yeah, if we don't win the division this year, I think it's a major disappointment. I guess maybe I should take that back a little bit because I still don't know what the Colts are going to be. But this team has by far the fewest amount of questions. You got Tannehill, who's a lot of people still underrated in my opinion. Yeah, I'm biased. I watch him every week. But when people say, oh, he's just mediocre, Tannehill is actually a good quarterback. I watch him play. He doesn't do a ton, but everything he needs to do, he does it well. And he rarely makes mistakes. He had one of the best quarterback ratings in the entire league. He doesn't turn the ball over much at all. And especially the one thing I'm really worried about on offense is Julio staying healthy because he does have that injury history. And we have had some receivers step up in practice. For example, Chester Rogers has been looking pretty good. I still think that John Robinson should go look to sign a guy maybe like Golden Tate or Kenny Stills, someone who will be cheap, but just to add a little more insurance, give Tannehill some more help because as much as I love Tannehill, he needs his help a lot. But that offense, I really don't. Everything I say about the Titans is going to come with a little bit of bias, but I don't know really how you stop that offense because you can't just put 9 guys in the box anymore because you have 2 elite receivers. And if you put 6 guys in the box, well, Henry's just going to blow right by it. It's really a pick your poison kind of approach for opposing defenses. One thing about our team, our defense is still has a lot of questions. We've only given up 6 points in the preseason so far, but I mean, it's preseason. It helps a lot when you're starting units playing against second teams.
Yeah.
So we don't know how they're going to perform come regular season. Hopefully Bud Dupree, our new acquisition, he makes an impact. He better for paying him that much. I mean, you're paying him $16.5 million, I believe it is, for 5 years. Mm-hmm. You need numbers there. So offense, everyone stays healthy, should be a great unit. Defense still has question marks.
100%. I like the Bud Dupree.
I also want to talk about the Farley pick. That was one pick I was actually ecstatic on draft night about because before his injury concerns came out, he was going to be potential top 10 pick in the draft. He slid all the way to 22. And he's not going to be ready to play yet. But corner is a tough position to adapt to. Give him time. I think he's going to be a really good player for us.
Solid. I totally forgot about the Bud Dupree signing, but I definitely liked it better because sort of a replacement for Jadeveon Clowney, but Jadeveon Clowney was pretty abysmal last year, so it's kind of an upgrade there. Again, the Titans got better in the offseason, and I think that there's not really – Titans are going to win the division unless they somehow fumble it. But other than that, Titans got it. They're the favorite for the AFC South. Going to the AFC West now, the Denver Broncos. Not much to talk about here other than their big question at quarterback here. Drew Lock has not performed up until this point. Where are they going to go with the quarterback position? You got Teddy Bridgewater. Is he really going to make a difference? I don't think so.
No.
So what are you going to do here? You went 5-11. They picked Pat Surtain at the second out of Alabama, the best corner in the draft, no doubt. Fantastic corner. He's going to perform. There's no doubt about it.
Kyle Fuller also they signed.
That's true. And the question is, with the quarterback position, how it is, Von Miller's been aging pretty heavily. What are we going to do here? Because we're 5-11, we're not really getting that much better in terms of a franchise as a whole. You've had good pickups here. One thing in Denver Broncos did last year that I really enjoyed seeing was Garrett Bowles took a big step up. The tackle it took a while back now. I can't remember how long, but he became a good tackle for them. Again, they still have a solid offense, but the quarterback position is a huge question mark. So I really don't know what they're going to do, especially with the fact that they didn't really address it with the draft. Teddy Bridgewater, I don't think is really the long-term solution. Drew Lock seems to not be a steady franchise quarterback. So what are we doing here, Max?
I think this team's going to go about as far as Drew Lock's going to take them. It's really dependent on his progression. And I'll just say right now, I don't really believe in him because he's had some good games, but mostly subpar. He doesn't seem like he can change that team at all. Jerry, I saw a stat on Pro Football Focus, and let me just say, I'm not a fan of Pro Football Focus at all, really. But one of their stats that was pretty telling was that I believe Jerry Jeudy had the most drops that were due to not even drops. He had the most incomplete targets because that were the quarterback's fault.
Yeah,
I should tell you a little bit, and yeah, I definitely by far last chance year for Drew Lock. If he doesn't improve at all, or even if it's just a marginal improvement, I don't see enough there to really to keep going with them. And I mean, I do think their defense is good, especially with the new acquisitions at corner. But this team, this team will go as far as the quarterback takes them, and I personally don't believe in Drew Lock.
And they took the best. I totally forgot about that too. They took the best wide receiver out of last year's draft, Jerry Jeudy. And he didn't.
Great.
I know.
He's great.
He needs the right quarterback though. That's the issue right now.
Yeah, obviously. But look at his routes. Like, wow.
His route running is fantastic. And he's another Julio Jones, where it's just tall receiver that can run routes like crazy. He has the speed. He has it all. He has all the tools. You gotta be able to get it.
I don't think Judy's the overall specimen that Julio is.
That's true. Who knows where he's going to end up, though? That's the question. But at the same time, it doesn't make a difference if you can't get him the football. So right. I'd love to see Jerry Jeudy do good. Moving on from there, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Not much to talk about here. They went 14-2. They dropped both their offensive tackles, which we talked about last season, which people hated in the comments. They went after us saying that was a bad move. They're like, oh, we didn't need him. But Mitchell Schwartz, he's a great tackle. I guess the monetary thing to be able to pay out like Chris Jones and Travis Kelce and Hill, you had to do it. You had to drop at least one tackle, but we all discussed it last year that you couldn't drop both. It's just too much of a loss. I think Mitchell Schwartz is the biggest loss. So that being said, that the offensive line may have some issues as they still have decent talent on the offensive line. Obviously, they don't have
for Orlando Brown. So that will fix the left tackle.
That's true, but at the same time, what do you do with the right tackle? Either way, it's Kansas. It's the Chiefs. Their offensive line, we saw it was an issue for them in the Super Bowl, but in the regular season, it's not going to be. They're going to be
when you're down your starting two tackles and playing Shaq Barrett.
Exactly.
Let's be honest.
They're going to be great again this season. There's no doubt about it. It's Patrick Mahomes and the entire crew.
The one thing I really think is could make or break their season is and I trust Andy Reid to figure this out, but can they do better scoring in the red zone? Because if you saw a lot last year, a lot of this team this offense in particular is one that thrives off of the deep plays. Mm-hmm. Going 7-10 yards of play is not their forte. They do it all in one big shot, and which it's the Chiefs. They have the talent to do it, and they can make it happen. Mm-hmm. But is it sustainable long term? Who knows? And again, Andy Reid's a top 3 coach in football. I trust him to figure it out, but it's just something they have to do. But I'm not going to work on it. They'll win 13 games minimum.
It's their division for sure. So going on to the Raiders, won 8-8 last season, which I thought they played a little bit above their talent coaching stance. They go and pick Alex Leatherwood, offensive tackle out of Alabama. Other than that, I don't know where this Raiders is another question mark team for me, where it's they have some talent on the team, but They traded away Trent Brown. Josh Jacobs is going to come back and hopefully be that perennial running back that you have. Defensively, they're okay. They have like Max Crosby, Abrams. They have guys that can perform, but nothing fantastic. Ultimately, question at quarterback. Derek Carr, I think, outperformed Mariota. I think he has that position locked in, but I don't know. This Raiders team just has a lot of question marks for me. I have no clue they're going to land up. Doesn't really matter down the line because the Chiefs have it locked in. This division is not really up for debate. Max?
Dude, I just can't get a handle on this Raiders team just based on the sheer inconsistency of them week in and week out. Like, there'll be games where they beat the Chiefs on the road. They beat the Chiefs. And they almost beat them again. But then they collapse in 3 straight games to the Chargers, Colts, and Dolphins. Not necessarily in that order, but it's like, what's going to happen with this team? I just can't. Is it on the coaching? That's one of those teams where I just can't pinpoint what the issue is. I think it's coaching because that's where usually inconsistency issues lie. But like, I don't know enough about this team. I can't trust them, and they can never seem to get a firm answer on Derek Carr. At some point, you just got to make a decision. Like, is he the guy you want to roll with or not? Like, there are just way too many what ifs about this team. Mm-hmm. And I'll just say the pick of Alex Leatherwood was not surprising the slightest because their criteria is anyone out of, if you don't go to Clemson, Alabama, or Ohio State, you're off our board in the first round. So
yeah, I want to see Henry Ruggs do good because I loved Henry Ruggs too. I thought he was a fantastic receiver at Alabama. Him and Jalen Waddle, very similar types of receivers. It really comes down to the quarterback throwing to them. You got the speed that could burn over the top, but if you can't get a quarterback that can deliver it, what good is that? So moving on from there, we have the Chargers, went 7-9 last season. They go ahead and get the new head coach, Staley, who I think is okay. Nothing spectacular there for me. Talking on this Chargers team, again, looking at the draft, took Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern offensive tackle in the first round. And I think their best pick of the draft was probably Asante Samuel Jr. Out of Florida State at corner in the second round. Doesn't really solve any overarching issues with them, no. Justin Herbert is still developing. He's probably the best rookie quarterback out of last year. But still has a lot of work to do. This team will go as far as they progress, essentially. They're a young team. They're rebuilding. I think they'll lock in second place in the AFC West, but still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, that's the key for the Chargers. You still got to do work, even though I love what I saw from Justin Herbert last year. And by the way, I'll say right now, I called Justin Herbert being a stud in the moment before he got drafted, and people were like, no. Well, look now, he's definitely one of the quarterbacks on the rise, but still more work to do this year. You're implementing a new offense, and you got to always be wary of the Chargers because they do have that choke factor about them, but it's definitely in the right direction, but you're not going to beat out the Chiefs this year. So, keep your expectations reasonable.
100%. So moving on to the NFC East, definitely another one of those interesting in my division. Starting with the Cowboys, they went 6-10 last season. They got McCarthy, wasn't fantastic as a head coach. We talked a little bit last season where like his leash is kind of short, so we're going to have to see what he does this season. However, Dak Prescott got injured, severe ankle injury is in the, I think is he back yet? I think he's still.
I think Dak's back.
Yeah. I don't know if he's ready to go right now. I think it was the thing they were questioning, but I think, but also I think he came back and then he re-injured his shoulder, right? Was that what happened during the preseason? He aggravated something in his shoulder. So Dak's having some injury issues. I forget exactly what it was, but regardless, they should be a little bit better this season with Dak back. However, I still don't think they did enough. Micah Parsons in the first round of the draft, extremely talented linebacker, best linebacker in the draft. He is insanely fast, covers so much ground.
So funny that they missed out on the corners they wanted.
Exactly. So that they went and got Kelvin Joseph in the second round at Kentucky as like a consolation prize. But with that being said, does the fit really work? Because now you have some too much talent maybe in the linebacker core that you didn't need between. I'm blanking right now. You have Van Der Esch, now Parsons, and then what happened?
Jalen Smith,
thank you.
Since he signed his contract.
Exactly. I was picturing him in my head. I couldn't think of his name. So thank you for that. So you have Jalen Smith, really talented linebacker core, but looking at your cornerbacks, you're still a little bit short there. Offensively, the offensive line is not what it used to be. A little bit of bias here, but I expect the Cowboys probably to take second place in the division. Max?
Yeah, the narrative among Cowboys fans that'll be that if Dak Prescott was healthy last year, we would have been so much better. No, I'm sorry, guys. Your team had a lot more issues than Dak's injury, mainly with Mike McCarthy. And that's another, like I keep bringing this up a lot, but that's another person who's a name and nothing else. We saw in Green Bay, we could see how bad he was, even with Rodgers toward the end. And especially last year, that he didn't have a quarterback to help him out. We saw how valuable Dak was. Once they had to play Andy Dalton, we could just see how terrible that offense was. Like, yeah, it's a downgrade for sure, but you shouldn't be scoring that few points with Dalton as your quarterback. Like with all the weapons you have, CeeDee Lamb, who's looking like a really good pick, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Ezekiel Elliott. Like, how do you not turn in at least something decent? Like, that's another one of those teams where the talent on the field does not say much to me. It's about the coaching, and Mike McCarthy is honestly one of the worst 3 head coaches in the league. I think he's that terrible, and
that's a big claim.
Maybe Cowboys may not even get second place in that division.
Oh wow! I mean, I'd love to see that, but who knows? Moving on from there,
I think they probably will, but like I don't believe in this team. I think if you got to get a new sideline boss if you want any hope. It doesn't look like Jerry Jones is keen on admitting his mistakes.
Gotcha. So that being said, moving on from there, we have my team, the New York Giants, who had a pretty spectacular offseason, made a lot of leaps forward here. One, they're locking to Joe Judge. I think he's the best head coach they've had in a while. The team really believes in it. Logan Ryan is there. They're able to draw in free agents based upon the head coaching, and that's fantastic. You went and got Kenny Golladay. Saquon's going to be back. James Bradbury had a fantastic season. This Giants team is definitely within position to win this division. It's going to be interesting. They went and got Kadarius Toney. I'm still struggling with his name, out of Florida. In my opinion, he's basically a budget. He's like a budget Jalen Waddle for me. I really wanted Jalen Waddle, but we wound up trading back in the draft, which, it is what it is. My only concern with this team, really, and I'm sorry to say as Giants fans, I know you guys are really going for it, but I don't know if I believe in Daniel Jones at this point. He just has not shown me enough that I'm like, yes, he's our franchise quarterback. If he doesn't perform this season, it's time to move on. Do I hope he does so we can make a playoff run? Yes. Do I think we're Super Bowl contenders? Absolutely not. We have a solid, talented roster. We have a lot of talent around the roster. We have a lot of depth to our roster. A, we don't have enough superstars. B, how far can Daniel Jones take us? And I really don't know right now. They're a big question mark for me. Do I think we'll win the division? Yes, behind Joe Judge's coaching and players' beliefs and just putting a full fourth effort into it. Yes, we'll win the division. Maybe we'll win a playoff game, but I really don't see us going any farther than that. And I don't know how far Daniel Jones is going to take us and if he's the answer for our future. Max?
Yeah, I'm not going to add a ton to what you said, other than I do agree that they'll go about as far as Daniel Jones takes them. You just got to stop turning the football over.
Yeah.
If you can't take care of the football, you're not going to be a successful quarterback. He's got to start making good decisions. And I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen. One thing I got to get your opinion on is, what did you think of the whole fight in Giants practice a couple weeks ago?
I don't think much of it. Players fight all the time. And it's like, they get aggressive and they start fighting. It's kind of a thing that just happens, and then a week or two goes by and everyone forgets it. So it's like,
it's one of those things where if the team's really bad, then people are going to say, oh, that team has no chemistry. But if they do it really well, it'll be like, oh, the conflict made the bond stronger. That shouldn't be the narrative necessarily, but it's what's going to be the narrative from a lot of people.
The hindsight bias with those situations is always strong. Like, oh, look, that's because it is what it is. Everyone fights in football at the end of the day. It's such a physical sport that like fights are bound to break out at some point. So moving on from there, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, who have now locked into Jalen Hurts as their quarterback. They go ahead, as mentioned earlier, and trade away Carson Wentz. I don't really know where this Philadelphia team is going to end up. Their offensive line is completely aged out. Jason Peters is obviously gone. Lane Johnson
played yet, really.
Yeah, I don't know how this offensive line is going to do. A lot of question marks there. Defensively, I really don't see the talent. Fletcher Cox is getting older. Still really talented. I don't know if talent's there. Jalen Hurts is. I don't know if he's a long-term answer at quarterback either. I haven't seen enough out of him. Like, yes, he's a franchise quarterback. Hasn't been horrible so far, but looking at how Jalen Hurts performed compared to Carson Wentz last season, and just going off of that, I think it was the right move for them to lock into Jalen Hurts, and then figure out a quarterback situation later. So I don't think they're in a horrible spot with that. I just question their talent, and I don't know if they're really going to be able to go as far as they need to be. Obviously, I love their pick in the draft. Jalen Reagor really has not panned out for them. In my opinion, he might be one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL based upon his tape last season. There were multiple times last season where I saw Jalen Hurts essentially just Jalen Reagor just gave up on plays entirely. Didn't run the route, didn't block, just lackluster effort. And no matter how talented you are, you can't replace bad effort. And that's what makes him one of the worst receivers, in my opinion, in the league. And that, obviously, with that being said, they still need wide receiver talent. They go ahead and get Devonta Smith, the Heisman winner. Really talented wide receiver. I do question two things about him. One, the need, because obviously this team has a lot of needs. But can't, Devonta Smith's a talented wide receiver. Two, I do question it. I know this was a big point when he was the Heisman winner, but his strength is a question to me because is he going to be physical enough at the next level? He's extremely skinny. He needs to put on some muscle mass if he's really going to compete physically at the next level. With his talent, he's able to get up a press in college. Will he be able to in the NFL? The corners are better. Maybe not. What's going to help with that is strength. So I think strength is definitely a big thing. It's going to be a big factor for him moving forward and be able to progress into a superstar wide receiver that he could be, because he definitely has the tools to do it in terms of his catching ability, his speed, his route running. So I think physicality is going to be a big thing for him. Max?
I will start off by saying I didn't really watch the Jalen Reagor tape like you did, but I'll just comment on that. That could be one of those things where a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, the Eagles' mess of a situation kind of made that happen. Guys, no. I don't care what team situation is, but if you're a certain player, as an individual, has to put in the effort. If you can't put in the effort, and if you're not going to be able to correct your own mistakes that you can control, I'm sorry, you're not going to be successful. Not every player on the Eagles, whether it's Wentz, Reagor, or whatever, is blameless. Each person contributes their own part to the mess. And Jalen Reagor, I take your word for it, with the lack of effort. If he can't make an effort, development and getting better as a player that takes time, and that will take time. But work ethic and effort, that's a whole other thing, and that's not a development thing. That's a mindset that you have almost your entire life. You have to be willing to put in the work, and if you're not, then you're just not going to pan out. As far as the Eagles team goes, well, I will say also about Reagor, pretty hilarious how the next pick was Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
So that's pretty funny. But as far as the Eagles team goes, I still don't really have expectations for them at this point, which is probably a good thing. They're a huge question at quarterback with Hurts. Obviously, the offensive line isn't really getting any better. Their defensive line's pretty good, but that's not going to make them a better franchise. Yeah. So I don't know if you've heard this, but I was seeing on Twitter, and I don't remember what it counts, but it's verified accounts for sure. I was hearing that they're prepared to throw a package at Deshaun Watson if and when he's cleared to play.
That'd be interesting.
Which I don't think he'd fix their issues, considering that the Texans were still terrible last year. But it's an interesting move to say the least.
100%. Maybe that'd be the move. I don't know. With that being said, going off for Reagor, I remember in the Justin Jefferson thing, I remember my friend's a huge Eagles fan. Shout out to Alex if he ever watches this. I never during that draft, I was like, I literally tweeted out, I was like, oh, the Eagles missed out on Jefferson. They're gonna regret that, and I was 100% right on that one. Oh, yeah. I guess moving on from there, we have the Washington football team, who is still without a real name going into the season as well. They need to get a name on that team, right? But what are they doing here? I don't know. They went 7-9 last season based off of Ron Rivera's coaching, which is incredible. He beat cancer and coached that horrific talented team to a 7-9. I won't say horrific, but 7-9 team. They probably did better than they should have. They won the division. With that being said, the defensive line is obviously fantastic. Between Deron Payne, obviously you still have Chase Young from last year, he's still developing, was pretty good last year. It's only going to get better this year. So I think their defensive line is solid. I think the biggest question here, and this is what's going to hold them back, and I think what's going to allow the Giants to win the division, is they have such a gaping hole at quarterback. Yeah, you have Ryan Fitzpatrick, but we know how Ryan Fitzpatrick is. He's good for 2-3 games. They call him Fitzmagic. And then he's horrible, absolutely atrocious. So it's just inconsistency. He's getting older. He's not anywhere near a solution for the team. Dwayne Haskins obviously didn't pan out. It was horrific on and off the field. He's now gone. They need an answer at quarterback. They did not go for it. In this offseason, they went ahead and drafted Jamin Davis out of Kentucky in the first round, and then Sam Cosmi out of Texas in the second round. Doesn't address the quarterback situation at all. I think that is their biggest question mark moving forward.
Yeah, if for all intents and purposes, considering what the situation's been in the past, it's kind of a breath of fresh air to see the football team actually making reasonably smart decisions. And no, Fitzpatrick's not going to, I mean, he'll be serviceable, but he's not going to take him to the promised land. I think we know that. The team around him is going to be pretty good. I like all their other signings seem to be tactically smart. I love signing Curtis Samuel. I think he's going to be an excellent complement to Terry McLaurin, who's already one of the more underrated receivers. I think plays a pretty different game, and I think he's going to give them that versatility they need. Antonio Gibson, he's been on the team, but he looks like he's going to be pretty good still. Jamin Davis, that was one of the few holes they had on their defense, but they cleared that, especially with that defensive line and Chase Young, who I think is going to be in contention to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think that's the team I for sure am picking to repeat to win the NFC East this year.
Okay, over my Giants. We'll see.
Yeah.
I hope not, but we'll see. So moving on to the NFC North. Chicago Bears, they're definitely in an interesting position here. They go ahead and get Andy Dalton, and they draft Justin Fields in the first round. I love Justin Fields. Obviously, Andy Dalton's been vocal about it, saying it's his team that he's going to start this year. I think the Chicago Bears will start Andy Dalton at the beginning of the season and then see how it goes and then put Justin Fields in later, similar to a Patriots with Mac Jones. Typically how it goes in the NFL. Either way, they went 8-8 last year. Don't really see much of a change there. I couldn't say they didn't really get significantly better. Didn't really get significantly worse either. I don't know. Matt Nagy's a solid coach. They're really inconsistent, and I think it's a problem. I really don't know what to say about this team, but are they going to win the division? Absolutely not. There's a clear powerhouse in the division. It is the Packers. So regardless of how they improve or they regress, Packers are going to win the division. So I don't really know where they land, but we'll see how Justin Fields does if he gets in this season. Max?
Yeah, I completely agree. That's another one of those teams where the quarterback is going to take him pretty much as far as they can go. And people are like out here saying, oh, Justin Fields, like he's the antithesis of Trubisky. He's going to make him so much better. Well, I think there's a reason the Bears haven't had a franchise quarterback almost in their entire existence. Like the problems might be deeper than, even though trading up for Trubisky and making that move was a horrific decision. I think the team has a lot to do with the fact that they've had no franchise quarterbacks, and it's a shame we can't have Alec back on the podcast this year. Yeah. And if he's watching, a shout out to him. But if you guys watched last year, you'll remember Alec and I always talk about how bad the Bears are. And honestly, until I see otherwise, that's going to be my belief. I don't really trust this team to develop quarterbacks.
I guess moving on from there, we have the Detroit Lions. With the Detroit Lions, they had a okay season last year, not great. 5-11. I'm not really sure where they're going to go there. They went and got Jared Goff in the offseason, made that swap with Matt Stafford. Not really sure where that puts them there. I have a lot of question marks about this team. They went and got Penny Sewell, which I think is a no-brainer there. A tackle was a must draft there when he came to them. So great pickup there. DeAndre Swift was solid last year. Okudah left a little bit more to be desired. They lost Kenny Golladay in the offseason, which is big. So I don't think this Lions team is really going to go anywhere else than where they were. Probably be around 5-11 again. Is Jared Goff better than Matt Stafford? I don't know, but I guess Jared Goff was ready for new scenery because he really was not fantastic with the Rams. I think he kind of held them back. Max?
I honestly have really low expectations for this Lions team. I don't know if they'll be quite as bad as the Texans, but I definitely think they could be in there competing for a top 3 pick. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we see an awful year from Goff, because if you look at the Rams, John McVay's an excellent head coach. He honestly might have made Goff better than he is, which is honestly kind of scary. And you take him to a horribly run Lions team, that spells recipe for disaster to me. And there's really, where can you really point to this team where you can say that one position really scares you? I can't really think of one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really don't see the Lions doing much this season.
I think it's going to be, I for sure have them in last place in the NFC North.
I do too as well. Moving on from there, we have the Green Bay Packers, who had a very shaky offseason, to say the least. But as somehow all came together in the end. Aaron Rodgers, the drama between Aaron Rodgers seems to be squashed now. He's pretty much, he's on the team. I have all the rumors he was leaving the team this offseason. He's on the team. I think the Packers have probably the second most talented roster behind the Browns, maybe in the NFL. There's just so much talent on that team. Devontae Adams, Jones, Rodgers, even Cy Kenny Clark, Darius Smith. There's just so many players you continue to name. So I think, again, Packers are the most talented team in the NFL, and I don't expect them to do anything else in that 13-3 season they had last year. If I had to guess, they'll probably regress a little bit because 13-3 is hard to repeat, especially with an aging Aaron Rodgers. But again, they're going to win division. I think there's no doubt about it. Max?
I just don't get what's happening in Green Bay, especially the Rodgers thing. So here, let me just put it to you this way: the Packers bring him back for another year. Yet they're going to say, we're going to cut your contract short so you're free to go next year.
Yeah.
Like, what? That's almost like a couple saying, we're going to plan to divorce, but we're going to stay together for another year until, like, the kids go to college or something. That does not sit well with me at all. And this might get me killed in NFL circles, and especially the Packers fan base. I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway because I believe it. I don't trust Aaron Rodgers to get them over the hump in big-time championship games. The last 3 NFC championships he's played in, he's not looked good. I mean, last year was a close game, but look at them in the 6 points off of 3 turnovers in the second half. Late in the first half, he threw an interception to, I believe, to Sean Murphy Bunting, and the Bucs capitalized it, scored a touchdown. That result that doesn't happen, but Packers probably win that game. And I remember late in the game, Packers down 8. Rodgers has green grass in front of him. Chooses to throw, throws an incomplete. Like, it's these decisions that I'm going to say this word again, could get me killed, but Aaron's almost kind of like a choker in big situations. That can he really get you over the top? I don't necessarily believe it.
I don't necessarily disagree with you either. I think that, when you look at Aaron Rodgers down the line, he just has not performed in playoff games as well as you want, especially in the past 4 or 5 years. I kind of agree with you. I don't know how far they're going to go. Again, starting from the preseason right now, I think the Packers are going to win the division. But again, I think they may regress a little bit. Are they going to make the Super Bowl? Who knows?
And don't get me wrong, this team's going to have a good record in the regular season. Yeah. They'll get as far as that. But especially with everything going on, it just doesn't spell well for me in the playoffs. It doesn't.
Exactly. So moving on from there, we had the Minnesota Vikings, who went 7-9 last season, who arguably had the best pick of the draft last year, maybe. Justin Jefferson was fantastic. I mean, he's an elite receiver already in the NFL. He's only going to get better. If he continues the pace and he continues to progress, he could be one of the best wide receivers the NFL has ever seen. I know it's a lot to say after 1 year, but I'm just saying he has the track to do that. So it's definitely possible. With that being said, is he? I don't know. In terms of the draft, they went ahead and went with Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. Went ahead and addressed the offensive line, which is probably their biggest need. So I get it there. I don't know where this Vikings team is going to end up, though. I don't think they really have the talent to do anything crazy. When you look at their secondary, I'm thinking off the top of my head, Patrick Peterson, who's kind of aged out at this point. Don't really have the pass rush that they had. Safeties, okay. Obviously, you still have Harrison Smith. Who else on this team is really, besides maybe running back, what else on this team are you like, wow? I guess running back, wide receiver. What else on this team are you like, wowed with? Mike Zimmer has been a successful coach in the past, but the Vikings team has been bad for a while now. Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and Justin Jefferson are their highlights. Outside of that, there's just not a ton of talent on this team to really drive them over any sort of hump. Definitely not past the Packers in this division. So if the Vikings were to make the playoffs, it'd have to be a wild card spot, in my opinion. Max?
The year-to-year inconsistency of this Vikings team really drives me crazy. There will be years where they're really good, and then there are years like last year where they disappoint. And honestly, I had this team last year as a dark horse Super Bowl contender. That's how much I believed in them. But then they went 7-9, and a common narrative in football circles is just to blame Kirk Cousins because he's not good, but he's not great. Like, don't get me wrong, but he was not the main reason that team was bad last year. Their defense was terrible, and a lot of that had to do with injuries. Daniil Hunter and Anthony Barr were out for most of the year. I believe Eric Kendricks was also out too, and their secondary play was one of the worst in football, really, without injuries, and they did little to replace that. So, I definitely think this team, their ceiling is second best to the Packers, and who knows what's going to happen. That's another team. I should say they did get Patrick Peterson, but circling back to what I said earlier, that's nothing but a name at this point. Patrick Peterson is clearly not what he used to be. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference for them. So, I definitely think they're locked into being second best at best.
I agree. So moving on from there, we had the NFC South, second to last division left that we have to cover. Starting with the Atlanta Falcons, I'm sure head coaching wise, they go ahead and pick up Arthur Smith, who I think you'll have a little bit more to say about, which we talked about last year. But Falcons sort of heading in the right direction. I don't know where they're at right now because Matt Ryan's aging. You went ahead and traded away Julio Jones. Todd Gurley didn't pan out at all, which I didn't really expect him to. It's crazy how Todd Gurley, 3-4 years ago, was the best running back. He was that Derrick Henry running back where everyone was wowed. And now he's a nobody now because, honestly, injuries, his arthritis in his knees just completely derailed his career. And it's unfortunate. Really talented running back. He just could not stay healthy. Other than that, I don't know where this franchise is at. They still have talented players on the roster. I don't know if the head coaching is going to make that big of a difference. We'll have to see, though. Looking at the draft, Kyle Pitts, probably the player that I'm most excited to watch this year. Tight end out of Florida, incredibly fast. He has that Calvin Johnson type feel to him. Can't say he's going to be that, but he definitely has potential to be. He has the physical tools to do so. So I think it'd be fun to watch Matt Ryan throw to him. He could be that replacement for Julio Jones, maybe. However, losing Julio Jones is what it is. I mean, what else can you say about that other than that it's going to hurt the franchise, especially in the receiver core? Calvin Ridley was going to have to step up and really take that place. Again, I don't know when this team's going to land. I can tell you, are they going to win the division? No. They were 4-12 last season. Maybe they'll go to 5-11, 6-10, maybe at best.
There's a 17th game on each schedule, so
that's true. Yeah, I forgot they added a game this year. So maybe they'll improve a little bit, but I can't really say they're going to really make a jump. They didn't add enough with Kyle Pitts, even though Kyle Pitts is a pretty spectacular player. That's what it seems like so far.
I'll talk about Arthur Smith first and foremost because he was the Titans' offensive coordinator last year. Yeah, we offenses in the league, but I think when you have guys like Derrick Henry and AJ Brown, that helps a lot. And something I also don't really get, people always, and as much as I love Ryan Tannehill, I do think he gets a little bit too much credit for one thing. People always talk about how that offense and Arthur Smith was such a genius with the play action and how Tannehill was really good with the play action. But when you have a great run game, that helps the play action so much. That really honestly is what makes play action. If you can have that ability to keep the opposing defense guessing, that's really what makes the biggest difference. I don't credit the play action success to anything more than really Derrick Henry being that threat. So I don't know how, and plus you'd never know how these coordinators are going to turn out as head coaches. From what I could tell, I don't think Arthur Smith, and nothing jumped out to me much about him besides that offense. So I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily a slam dunk hire by them. And so the rest of the team, I just don't know anymore. This team just seems to be trending in the wrong direction continually. Since 28-3, they have not recovered. They have not recovered from it in the slightest. They continue to choke games away in amazing fashion. It just happens like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. This is another one of those teams where I can't look at the talent on the field as much as everything else.
Because I mean, look at the talent. They still have okay players like a Deion Jones, elite linebacker.
Todd Gurley was actually decent for them last year. Like it's not like he was terrible.
Yeah, it's true, but it's just he's not Todd Gurley that we knew was Todd Gurley. So
it is like the Falcons aren't suffering from a lack of talent; they're suffering from a lack of everything else.
Exactly. So it's tough to say where they're going to land. Maybe Arthur Smith is the solution.
They kept Dan Quinn around for way too long, which tells me a lot about the upper management ownership.
Exactly. So moving on from there, we have the Carolina Panthers, who ended last season 5-11. Matt Rule, as his first year as head coach, was pretty limited on the talent they have, and I think we're going to see sort of a similar record this year. They have a lot of work to do. Christian McCaffrey will be back. Draft-wise, I think they did a solid job. I really like J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. I think he's one of the better corners in the draft, probably the second best behind Surtain. So I like the draft there. Again, I don't really see that they improved that much. They went ahead and acquired Sam Darnold in the offseason, but is that really an improvement? He was really bad with the Jets. Maybe a change of scenery for Sam will be good, but is he really that talented of a quarterback? It's yet to say with how bad he was with the Jets. So maybe Matt Rule will be that guy that will be able to coach Sam Darnold into the quarterback he was supposed to be in the NFL. But it's hard to say. I really don't see them progressing that much farther. Maybe winning an extra game or two, but definitely not going to win the division. Max?
Honestly, I think this Panthers team has potential to surprise some people. And really, but it's really going to come down to, again, it's one of those teams where I think the quarterback's going to take him as far as they can go because we don't know what Sam Darnold can be. We really don't know if it's him that was the issue or if it was the Jets. I do believe it was mostly the Jets, but we have to see. But when we really look at this team on the roster, this team is honestly kind of loaded. Their defense, talent-wise, is one of the best in football. If you look
Dante Jackson.
Yeah, Dante Jackson,
Fantastic.
Derek Brown. They signed Daquan Jones, Brian Burns. They signed Hassan Reddick. Torcos Matos has probably yet to reach his potential. They have Shaq Thompson. Looking on offense, I mean, I don't think the receivers are the greatest because they lost Curtis Samuel and DJ. Well, they also have Robbie Anderson. No, they have two good receivers along with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. McCaffrey, I think, is going to have a huge year. I think he's going to rebound. And he's going to show why he's the best running back in the league. Yeah, I'm a Titans fan. I love Derrick Henry, but I think McCaffrey honestly is better. Sorry to do that. But no, I think this Panthers team has a chance to surprise people. I think they're another potential dark horse for a playoff spot. I really do. Especially in the 7-team playoff, because last year, you remember, the 7-team was 8-8. I think they can do better than that. I don't know if they will, but I think they have a shot to turn some heads.
This is true. So moving on from there, we have the New Orleans Saints, who personally I believe have the biggest regression in all of football this year. It's pretty obvious why. Losing Drew Brees and being stuck with Jameis Winston is just not a good look for me. I don't see them even making the playoffs this season. They may, Sean Payton's still the head coach. They still have the likes of Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, still really talented players on offense there. I just don't know the quarterback situation. I don't like Jameis Winston at all. Not a huge fan of him at all. But how many turns? He's like Daniel Jones. Continue to turn the ball over, you're guaranteed to lose games. That's how you lose games. And I don't really see the Saints even making the playoffs this season with the state that they're in terms of the quarterback position, as well as the aging roster that they do have. So for me, let's ranking it right now, probably have the Saints in third place in the division, Falcons fourth. I guess we go Panthers second. You kind of convinced me to move them up a little bit. I'm not going to lie. And obviously Bucks first. But what do you think about the Saints, Max?
I honestly completely agree with you. I remember last year we were talking, I think it was on the Regular Sport Universe podcast, where you said you thought the Saints were trending in the wrong direction. And I kind of said, no, not really. Well, looking back, I think you might have been right on that one. I don't believe really in this team at all. First of all, they have no quarterback really. People would say, oh, they played Taysom Hill last year probably because they could get him in short doses. Let me tell you right now, if the Saints believed that Jameis Winston was the better quarterback, they would have played Jameis Winston. The fact that they didn't play him at all shows really how much trust they have in him, and that's not much at all. So, and then their only other player that really scares you is Alvin Kamara at this point, because we don't know what's going to happen to Michael Thomas at this point. He seems to be in and out, and his head is kind of not there. He loses the switch really easily. And Alvin Kamara, I really do think people overrate him, because when the main thing people will say is like, look at his versatility, he's so dangerous. Well, when you don't give him a good quarterback, this guy doesn't do much of anything, because so much of his game is the receptions. Like, yeah, you want to be versatile, but like, is it appropriate to say like being versatile to a fault, where the point where your game relies so much on your versatility that you can't what's the word I'm looking for here? I hate this happens anyway, where you can't be good enough in one area of the game. Like, if you're a running back, you have to be so good running the ball. Like, Alvin Kamara is not a consistent workhorse. Yeah, he had that one game where he ran for 150 plus and 6 touchdowns, but that obviously no one's capable of that on a consistent basis, and Kamara's not capable of being a workhorse running back. That was the only game where he rushed over 100 yards in the season.
It's true.
And I don't see the Saints team really putting it together because obviously, like I said, when Taysom Hill was in for those games, Kamara was effective. I think the more I think about it, I do think the Panthers are going to overtake them for second place in the division. I think it's going to be a really regression year for them.
Mm-hmm. And then moving on to the Bucs, easy. I think this might be the easiest division to win for the Bucs out of any division in football right now. It's just not really a team that's competing against them in this division. They bring back Brady. Interesting enough to take Kyle Trask in the second run out of Florida. He should be interesting to see. Brady goes down. I don't think he will, but Brady goes down. You have Kyle Trask there. I think Kyle Trask is a pretty talented quarterback out of Florida. Had a little bit of a rough season in terms of college. He started off as like a Heisman favorite, and then he kind of fell apart down the line. But talented quarterback there in the second round. The Bucs looking to continue the success after Brady's gone. But this could be Brady's final year. We say that every year. Freaking knows you guys will be playing at least 50. But they bring back the major core that they had last season. They pretty much got everyone back. There's no reason they technically can't repeat winning the Super Bowl. They only won 11-5 last season. They won the Super Bowl. I remember I said they called it when the playoffs started. I'm like, keep track of the Buccaneers, even though they're 11-5 because they have Brady. You just can't count them out. They had won a Super Bowl, solidifying Brady as the GOAT. Definitely going to make the playoffs again this season. I have no doubt about it. How far will they go in the playoffs? I really can't tell you. I think it's ultimately going to come down to how far that Buccaneers defense can take them because Brady, as great as he is, let's be honest, the defense really carried the Buccaneers last year, especially in the playoffs. Could the Buccaneers still have won without the spectacular performance of the defense? Yes. But that Buccaneers defense was incredible at last playoffs. So it's just, when it gets to playoff time, are they going to be able to repeat? I don't know. But again, Buccaneers have this division, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, the Bucs defense definitely carried them most of the way, but let's not act like Brady didn't do his part. Like Brady still made some great plays, especially in the NFC Championship game that I talked about earlier. That play at the end of the first half where he threw a touchdown to Scotty Miller from 40 yards out. Like that's what Brady does. He makes the plays in the big moments that make the difference between winning and losing. And Tom Brady is a proven winner. You cannot convince me that without Brady, the Bucs would have re-signed all their starters. You just can't. The Brady influence, I think, is the glue for that team. It goes such a long way for cultivating a great culture. And also, I was watching you watch Set the Edge at all on YouTube?
No.
So he's a YouTuber, and he talked about, I saw a video long ago, it's actually about Jameis Winston, where he talked about how Carson Palmer once had an interview where he said adjusting to the Bruce Arians offense in the first year is really tough for quarterbacks because a lot of his playbook is adjusting routes on deep balls. Mm-hmm. So it can be tough for quarterbacks to really lock in. But the fact that Brady could lock it in and win a Super Bowl in the year where COVID happened says a lot about Brady. Brady is unquestionably the best of all time. I think doing what he's doing at 43 all but proves it. No other player in sports has done what he's doing. But when you look at this Bucs team overall, there is not one area on this team where I can point to and say that's a weakness. Mm-hmm. I'd say off the top of my head, maybe their weakest position is strong safety, but then free safety. But Jordan Whitehead's a very serviceable safety. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if he's free or strong, but either way, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's not one area on this Bucs team where you really look at and say they need help. And that's why they can do what they did and draft a quarterback in the second round that'll pan out in a few years. Because if Kyle Trask can sit behind Brady, let's say 2 more years, there's a good chance that can go a long way for his development. And I will say for Brady, as great as he is and as great a shape as he's in, you never know when he's gonna take that nosedive, because we saw with Peyton Manning in his last year, out of nowhere, seemingly, he just fell apart and his body just deteriorated on him. That happens, and it can happen out of nowhere. So, it's not as much as great as Brady is. Again, it's not a matter of if it happens; it's when it happens. It's going to be in the next few years.
100%. Again, look at this Buccaneers team, right? With Jameis Winston, pretty atrocious. Not a good team, football team. Brady gets their Super Bowl contenders. They have a talented roster. It's just total 180 of the franchise.
The same defense almost with Winston, except for Antoine Winfield.
This is what happens when you have somebody like Jameis Winston putting that defense on the field consistently over and over again. As great as the defense is, they're not perfect. And if you keep putting them out on the field, they're not going to perform. So what can you do? And then going back to the Buccaneers offense, right. Even look at the offensive line, right? Tristan Wirfs, what a selection that was. I think he was easily by far the best offensive lineman selected out of last year's draft. In elite offensive lineman, you could plug him anywhere and he's going to perform, and he's going to be great for Kyle Trask maybe in the future. But Buccaneers to repeat. So moving over to the NFC West, starting off,
we had football. I got to say that right now.
Definitely the best division in football, and here we go with my little take here. Arizona Cardinals is going to be the most improved team over this next season.
Okay.
And I thoroughly believe that. I think that they're going to put it all together this year. They went 8-8 last season. I think they finally have all the pieces that they need. They wouldn't pick Xavier Collins out of Tulsa, so that's a solid pick. But just looking at it, they picked up J.J. Watt. Budda Baker was fantastic last season. You picked up J.J. Watt. DeAndre Hopkins, I think Kyler Murray's going to continue to take that step up. I think everything's going to come together here. I think Isaiah Simmons is going to continue to grow. Again, I love Isaiah Simmons because I just think he's so versatile. He's 6'4" with the speed of a corner, but can play linebacker. So I think he's going to be the dominant player on defense. I think this Arizona Cardinals team is going to come together. And honestly, looking at it, they may win the division. I'm going to say right now that the Arizona Cardinals will win the. No, hold on. Arizona Cardinals second in the division because I have a team that's going to go over them. So I'm going to go Arizona Cardinals, nearly tying for the division, coming in second place, definitely winning the wild card. As I guess they missed the playoffs last year, so they're definitely making the wild card this year.
So let me just say right now, I love what this Cardinals team is capable of. We've seen what they can do, how powerful that offense can be. Kyler Murray at his best is an MVP candidate.
Yeah.
We're going to get an answer this year, whether it's him that's the problem or Cliff Kingsbury, because they were inconsistent last year. That week 17 game against the Rams, when Kyler was injured, Cliff Kingsbury, when you look back at that game, he had some questionable play calls. I just don't know about him adapting to situations. We're gonna get an answer this year of whether it's him or whether it's Cliff or Kyler. But as far as knowing what this team can do, I fully believe in them. I just think that's a huge question mark that needs to be answered.
Yeah, I think Byron Murphy's gonna step up too. And I see this team. There's so much talent here.
And it's about Simmons. They have to figure out a role for him.
That's true.
Another player like Kamara, where you need to hone in on one, one really good specialty. And I mean, he's young, he can do that, but it just needs to happen.
I mean, I like where he is right now, where he's playing a strong safety in the box. He's kind of that role player. You got to put him essentially he's a strong safety playing middle linebacker. If he continue to build that strength and play the run as well and be able to cover, he's that guy that you can put on the best receiver and expect him to cover. He's going to be that player when they go against the 49ers, somebody who can absolutely shut down George Kittle. You know what I mean? So I think that's where his role is going to be best. And I think he will blossom to that over time. So moving on from there, we have the 49ers who go ahead and take Trey Lance in the first round. They're going to be an interesting team. I don't know where they really stand right now. They were so riddled with injuries last year that they were a Super Bowl team the year before, and then they get riddled with injuries. They go 6-10. I don't know where they're going to go, but Trey Lance, I think, is a really good quarterback, so I'm happy with that pick there. And then Aaron Banks out of Notre Dame was a good pick there. Solid draft. They went 6-10. I think they'll come in third in the division because Trey Lance still has to grow. That's where I would place them, and I think you'll. I'm blanking out on their starting quarterback's name right now.
Garoppolo.
Yeah, Garoppolo will probably start the season. They'll have Trey Lance step in at some point. I see them coming in third. They're just not the team that they once were. Obviously, Sherman's not even on the team anymore, if I'm not mistaken. He's not signed to a team currently. So, that defense is not as great as it was, still pretty solid. Our injuries can affect them again. It's hard to say, but I just don't see them as the team that they once were. I see them probably coming in third in the division with the lack of quarterback play. Max?
I think this is another one of those teams where I think if they stay healthy, they're going to be a really good team. I will say, I think John Lynch is one of the better GMs in football because if there's one thing he's great at building a team that can win in the trenches. Every year, if you notice the 49ers' highest picks in the draft, it's all at some point in the first and second round, they always take someone on the offensive line or defensive line. That's what they do, and it works out well. Remember last year for them, Nick Bosa didn't play. Javon Kinlaw is going to get better. Fred Warner didn't play. Yeah, their secondary is definitely going to be a little shaky. But the big question really for them is, can they stay healthy? Last year they had like COVID definitely played a key role in a lot of people getting injured, but they dealt with like the same stuff 2 years ago when Garoppolo got hurt and they got a bunch of injuries. Like, do we need to call into question their training staff? We don't know. I mean, last year, yeah, we can give them a pass, but if they're injured like that again this year, then there are some decisions that are going to have to be made. And about the quarterback competition, and yeah, Trey Lance has that great upside. Don't rush him into a starting role.
Yeah.
That team around Garoppolo is certainly good enough that if he's starting and he has to play a few games, like they will be fine. Like he may win you Super Bowl, but they're going to have a good record if that happens. And even if they don't win the division, they very well could still make the playoffs.
With that being said, moving on from there, we have the Seahawks. I think they may have another big regression this year. I don't think they're not going to be as good as they were last season. They went 12-4 last season, and really interesting year. They started off really hot. Russell Wilson was the MVP favorite, and he fell apart down the line. Or I don't even know what offensive line was pretty abysmal down the line. Honestly, they don't really have much of a running game. They had no draft capital this year. Their only pick was Dwayne Eskridge. Just have to check with the name out of Western Michigan.
Went to the Chiefs.
What
I thought Dwayne Eskridge went to the Chiefs.
No, he went to the Seahawks.
Are you sure? Let me look that up right now.
Yeah. I have it right in front of me.
Okay, fair enough.
So they went and got Dwayne Eskridge and then Trey Brown. So they picked the first time they picked was in the second round. Not much draft capital. Wasn't much room to improve the team. Jamal Adams just wasn't the player that he normally was with the Jets. Regressed a little bit last year. Maybe he'll pick it up again this year, but I just don't know where this team stands right now. That offensive line is so abysmal. The defense can't stand on its own 2 feet. They gave up a ton of points last year. I just don't see the Seahawks going 12-4 again. I see them probably losing a couple extra games this year, and then probably going. They might end up in last place in this division, which would be insane.
How stacked that division is.
Yeah, and they came in first last time too.
Yeah.
So
I just can't. This is another, like the Raiders, I just can't wrap my head around what this team is, because just based on the sheer inconsistency, like in the beginning of the year, that was an offensive juggernaut. Even though the defense was terrible, they were always lighting up their offense with Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf, and even Tyler Lockett, who gets underrated because he gets kind of overshadowed by the specimen that is DK. That offense was doing great, and the defense wasn't. But the second half of the year, it seemed like the defense kind of picked it up a little bit, but the offense took a step back. Like, it's one thing to be inconsistent, but to be inconsistent and you can't get good production out of more positions than just one, that's a cause for concern. And we saw it in the playoffs, that once it came to playoff football, they got exposed, and neither the offense or the defense were particularly good. They just got beat bad. It was an embarrassment for them. And again, based on how the rest of that division's going, I think they're going to come in last, and their record's probably going to be a little worse than what their team is because of the teams around them. But I honestly don't see them making the playoffs.
Yeah, it can be rough. So moving on from there, last team we have to cover, the Los Angeles Rams, went 10-6 last season. They're actually came second place in division last season. They're my favorite to win division this season.
Yep.
Jalen Ramsey, what a season he had. I mean, the definition of a shutdown corner last season. Then you have Aaron Donald, always does what Aaron Donald does. Aaron Donald's tough because he's like, his sack numbers aren't quite what they were, but you got to realize he's getting double and triple teamed every single play.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not a fair comparison. He's Aaron Donald. That defense is something else between those, having probably the 2 best defensive players at their position in the league on the same team. They're a force to be reckoned with on defense. And then looking back on the offensive side, Sean McVay, extremely talented offensive coach, great scheme. Now they pick up Matt Stafford. I think Matt Stafford is the quarterback. It took me some time to sit on it, really think about it. I think Matt Stafford can really get him over the hump to really solidify this division and take it. I think Matt Stafford, when you look at him and the lines, what was he great at? He had a fantastic arm, terrible coaching, terrible X's and O's.
Terrible offensive line.
Exactly. Matt Stafford is also that too. You can't forget about that. Now he's got a better offensive line. He's got the arm talents roughly still, and now he's got the coaching. Matt Stafford, I think we can see take a big jump this year. I don't know if he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but I think he's going to be that guy that, Jared Goff couldn't get him over the hump. I think Matt Stafford can if everything pans out how it's supposed to. So Rams easily for me are going to take this division.
I definitely think they're going to take the division. They're another. I will say, as good as this division is, that's not to say every team doesn't have their questions. And then for the Rams, also inconsistency, because they go out there look great certain weeks and beat really good teams. Then they lost to the Jets.
Yeah, sure.
They lost to the Jets. Like I don't understand it at all. I definitely think that's the one criticism I have of McVay, that his team is not consistent enough. But top to bottom, this is easily one of the best teams in football, especially. But it's really going to come down to Matt Stafford again. It's going to be as far as Stafford will take them, and I trust him to work out, especially with a great coach like McVay. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are two really underrated receivers. Kupp has the slot guy. He is really good speed, and he can make some defenders look bad. Robert Woods, I don't think he has a main strength, but he always finds a way to produce. And with a better quarterback, I think it's going to help him a lot. The one thing that's really going to hurt him, no Cam Akers. And so Cam Akers, they're going to have to running back by committee. But even then, a lot of Super Bowl teams don't have that great running back, even in this day and age. A lot of them require that, not require, but they have that running back by committee kind of thing. So as much as really what gives the Rams the edge over the Niners in my mind is the fact that the Rams' questions are not if they can be healthy. The 49ers' questions are they going to be healthy? And when you can't rely on your players to be on the field, you're not going to win games. So I think the Rams have the least concerning questions out of everyone. And I think they got better in the offseason, as much as they're probably going to be screwed in 2 years because they have no draft capital and they're going to have to spend probably because of the cap. Yeah. Right now, they're looking really good. So I definitely think they're going to win the division. Super Bowl, I don't know, because at some point, not having first round talent in what's good, like 5 years, not since 2016, that's going to catch up.
I agree. So I guess that covers every team in the preseason.
Did we agree on every division winner?
What happened?
Did we agree on every division winner?
I think so, yeah.
Who did you pick for the NFC East? Because I don't think you said that clearly.
All right, so going NFC East, I picked the Giants. So I guess it's the one we disagree. So going over it, we got the consensus. AFC East, we're picking the Bills.
Yep.
AFC North, I'm taking the Browns.
Yep.
AFC South, we got the Titans.
Yep.
AFC West, easily the Chiefs.
Yep.
NFC East, I picked the Giants. You picked the Washington football team.
Disagree.
The NFC North, the Packers. NFC South, the Buccaneers. Then the NFC West, the Rams.
Yeah, we agreed on 7 out of 8 division winners.
There you go. So I guess this season's going to be interesting. You know, there's going to be the dark horse team that no one expects.
We didn't talk about this prior to the podcast at all. We went into this without we didn't talk much about football all season. We went into this just like off the cuff.
Yeah.
I can't believe we agreed on all these division winners.
I know, it's pretty incredible. I guess with that being said, that kind of concludes our podcast for the first time. I hope you guys enjoyed the listen. Hopefully we're going to bring on Ian back next week. Ian wants to have a little bit of a focus on the fantasy football section, which I don't think we need to recover every single team next week. We're going to have to pan out to see what we're going to do with it. Maybe there'll be some things that change. Maybe there'll be a preseason game, something that'll really pique our interest. Definitely a lot of things to talk about. Maybe we can cover a little bit more of the rules. There's a couple of rule changes next week. A lot that we can do. If you guys have any concerns, questions, comments, ideas, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you guys for listening. Max, you have any final words?
No, thank you for listening. I'm really glad to be back. We haven't done this since April, I believe.
Yeah, it's been a while. So
really early April.
See you guys in the next episode.